different as an actor, right? How do you position yourself in that space? Because the traditional sense of filmmaking is very different than the content creator space. So do you play in both spaces, or are you strictly in the traditional filmmaker actor space?
Right now, I'm strictly in the traditional space, and I've I've started making my own movies because I'm finding that networks are churning out so many shows. I don't know about you guys, but I spend more time sifting through streaming channels looking for something to watch than actually watching things. And I often turn things off after 5 minutes. Sometimes it's down to the production quality, the production value. Sometimes you presume that if something's on a streaming network, it it should be of a certain standard. Now I know they have standards pertaining to certain equipment and camera kit you have to use, but sometimes you just look at it and something's off, and you have this thing called uncanny valley, and you look at the thing and you can't quite put your finger on what's not right, but it just doesn't feel good to watch it. And I'm finding that I'm doing my best in having made my first short film, but coming from a background of working on super high production. I've worked on all sorts of huge Netflix productions with $200 to $300 million budgets, Avengers movies, and everything in between, down to EastEnders and Casualty, all the way up to Marvel and huge TV shows. And the storytelling and the performing really has to stay first. It has to be put first, and everything else is the icing on the cake. And I want to look forward to watching shows again, and I want to be engrossed, and I want to be taken in, and I want to know, want to know what happens next, and I want to come back tomorrow. And it happens less and less and less and less, and I find myself doom scrolling, looking at Instagram and things like that, because I find myself going back in time and watching 90s and noughties movies where they did have to focus solely on the story because they didn't have access to some of the technology we have now. They didn't have all of the easier ways, not done to take away from visual effects artists, so they're doing an amazing job. But we didn't have so many ways to cheat things. Things had to be done practically, they had to be done the hard way. I spend a lot of my time working on sound stages and in studios, in front of blue screens, and I'm happy to be working, but sometimes it feels quite soulless. And I want to shoot in real places with real people on locations. And I know it's not always possible, and they have their reasons for doing it, but no matter the genre, we have action fans, drama fans, horror fans, and we have people that don't like other genres, but 100% of people who consume film and television enjoy a good story. And if the story's good, everything else should fall into place, or it will fall in. If you've got a good story and you mess it up,
You shouldn't be doing it.
I don't know what I was going to say. Listen, I'm not going to talk too much until my film play tomorrow. You might say, yeah, you want to talk. That was trash.
I'm making a note. I'm making a note.
Oh, you suck. Get off the stage, boo.
No, but that really you set me up for a really good question that I'm going to ask Ms. Nixon here, because you mentioned your stories going far, right? To have a good story. So can you talk to us a little bit about crafting stories for different platforms and what makes good stories for different platforms? Because you have the streamers, you have the social media content creators, you have these new things. I don't know how many of y'all know about this new thing called verticals, right? Man, you can doom scroll on verticals like for hours. So Ms. Nixon, talk to us a little bit about, how do you go about creating content for all of these different platforms to make it good?
All right, so I'm going to take this from twofold. I recently had a social media creator who approached me and said, Sass, I want to write scripts. How do I start writing scripts? And I looked at him and I said, but you have been writing scripts. You post a video on TikTok every day. But he was like, yeah, I didn't write it. It was just something that came up in my head and I just did a video. So I said, okay, but you wrote that script in your head. It all starts in your head. It begins with the idea. And once you get that idea, I believe the next step is this a good idea? And then the next step is this idea good enough to become a film? Because sometimes you have good ideas, but not all good ideas make a film, right? And sometimes you have good ideas and you put out that 1 minute video on social media and it doesn't go anywhere because inside of your head, this is a very good idea. The next step for me is to say, pitch it to somebody. If it's your aunt, your grandma, your mommy, you know, I have this idea about this girl who wants to go to Black River Film Festival, but she don't have a ride, she don't have any money to buy any new clothes. I want to give her the money, but I don't want to give her the money and she think that I like her. What do I do? That is what the story is about.